myself. My name is Kevin Ortiz, and I currently have the honor and the privilege to serve as the president of the Alumni Network for the Dream.Us. I myself, of course, I'm a Dream.Us scholar, graduated in December 2017. And over the course of the next couple of weeks, the Dream.Us Alumni Network will bring to you a series of events, a series of opportunities for you to experience, to learn, and to connect with other alumni from the scholarship, as well as to learn from different and diverse backgrounds, not just from heritage, but also backgrounds of careers. For example, today we are talking about how to break into tech. And for that, we have a very special guest. A lot of you might know Cesia Bulnes. She will talk to you today about her journey to tech, to working at Microsoft. Next week, that's around this same time on Tuesday, we'll have another session where we'll get you to meet another member of the Alumni Council. So you can see that. We'll continue to promote that as well. The week after that, the following Tuesday, we're going to have a little bit of a hangout, no agenda, just come out and get to know the alumni network, the leaders, as well as yourselves. So we really are going to be putting together agendas that allow you to kind of interact and get to meet us. One of the feedbacks that we use is the alumni survey that a lot of you took, which we want to thank you for doing that. And we learned that what our alumni want is that they connect with other alumni. They want to hear about opportunities for jobs and interviews, prep, as well as resume building. So we really want to create a space where we all get to learn from each other. And so please, hopefully you enjoyed today. And without further ado, I kind of want to get going. I know it's a little late for you guys on the East Coast. It's past 9 p.m. And for good reason, because our special guest today is coming all the way from the West Coast. Some might say it's the Best Coast, West Coast, Best Coast. I got my doubts. But Cecia is a DACA recipient who graduated from the Dream.Us class of 2019. She graduated with a bachelor's in computer science from the Florida International University. Do we have any FIU alumni on the call? Hopefully we do. She currently works at Microsoft as a program manager and is also about to graduate this December from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign with a master's in computer science. So she has an internship. She has had an internship as a software engineer and program manager, and is excited to share some tips with you all today. So I am just honored to have my sister Cecia here today with us to kind of share some great tips. At any moment, if you want to ask a question, we got a few different options. You can raise your hand, you can turn on your camera, you can actually type it in the chat. We want to make sure that we hear your voice as well. But Cecia, I'm going to turn it over to you to run the program and let us know how do we get into tech. So,
of course, yeah, thank you so much for the intro. Like you said, if anyone has any questions at any time, I would love to hear it. So feel free to just talk and let me know. So let's let this load. And hopefully I'm not covering this for everyone. Okay, cool. So basically right now we're gonna look into how to break into tech. And this is a guide created for dreamers by a dreamer, AKA myself. And basically what I'm gonna go through is the introduction of myself, why you should go into tech in case you are an early year student. What are some of the potential majors for tech, careers in tech, how and where to apply to jobs, and also when, actually, I forgot to mention that, and how to prepare for internships and full-time offers. So we'll be looking at resume, a couple of books and a couple of resources that you should look into, something called mock interviews, mentorship, and hackathons. So let's get to it. So a brief introduction. My name is Cesia Bulnes. I am Honduran Palestinian, and I arrived to the US as a 3-year-old. So pretty much an American and a proud dreamer. I graduated from Florida International University, and I got to attend thanks to TheDream.Us. And I graduated with computer science. I'm currently a program manager at Microsoft. I was previously a software engineer at Visa. So if you ever have questions about either or, let me know. I've done both, so I can kind of relate a bit more. And I'm currently pursuing my master's in computer science at UIUC, and I will finally be done with that in December. I cannot wait to graduate. And I've been doing that while working. So yeah. Why break into tech? Basically, the main thing that I looked for when I first started choosing a major was the stability and salary. The average incoming salary for a software engineering role is $91,000 a year. Of course, once you go to more expensive cities such as San Francisco or Seattle, the salary may increase, and depending on the specific company, the salary might also increase, decrease, but that is the average salary. And there are approximately 500,000 jobs that are expected to be added all the way through 2026. So there is a lot more demand than supply. So you're almost guaranteed a job if you study really hard. Apart from that, there are not a lot of minorities in tech. So I think you should definitely take that challenge and show people how resilient our community is and be there as well as for representation. Can you see this side? I don't know if you guys can see. You can? Okay. So some of the most popular majors in tech are computer science, math, information technology, systems engineering, but there's many more. There's also MIS. There are MBAs. Depending on the role that you are trying to pursue, there are multiple majors that you can pursue. These are just a couple in case you are struggling and still deciding as to what you want to do. And if you're interested in tech, definitely research. There's plenty. There's even technical writing. So you could be a writer and then get a job in tech. You can be a designer, get a job in tech. So yeah, some careers that I wrote are software engineer, product manager, program manager. So product and program are kind of similar, but product is more business focused, and then program manager may be a bit more technical. I'm a program manager, but depending on the companies, some companies may call it a program manager, but you might be a product manager, which is kind of my case. Like, I'm a technical program manager, so I do both. There's also data science analyst. One of my best friends is a customer success account manager. So that's more businessy, more forward facing with the customer. Technical writer, designer, finance. I could really go on. There's any career that you may think of, law, for example, you'll find that in tech as well. So let's go into preparing for interviews. Number one, resume. What is a good resume that will make recruiters want you? Number two, you need to study. You need to do LeadCode if you're going for software engineering roles. You need to do cracking the coding interview book. You need to do cracking the PM interview book. You need to study algorithms. You need to study product design. And then you can put that studying into action by doing mock interviews. What are mock interviews? Basically, grab one or two friends and quiz each other. Grab one or two friends, whiteboard with each other, test each other. Grab one of the books that I just mentioned and literally talk it out and give each other tips, because you may think you don't know, but when you see other people struggling, that's also you learning, because you're learning, oh, I shouldn't do what they just did. And you can both learn by, teaching each other that way. So there are multiple internships. I wrote out a couple here for freshman and sophomore internships. There's, for example, FBU, which is Facebook University. There's Microsoft Explorer, and there's Amazon Future Engineer. And then outside of that, for any year, so junior, senior, you can literally log into LinkedIn and find so many internships. So you just have to literally look them up and apply to so many. Like, I think there was one year that I had like 11 interviews lined up because I just applied. So you just have to really apply. But the main thing there is making sure that your resume is, good enough for a recruiter to want to give you that interview. So where do I look? You can literally look into LinkedIn, like I said. You can look at it based on state, etc. Just search by the title, search software engineering internship, program manager internship, etc. Another good thing to do is go to conferences. So when I went to conferences, that's actually one of the main things to look at, especially as a minority. These companies, they know there is lack of diversity, etc. And these conferences are kind of a guarantee to give you an interview. Now, one thing I do want to clarify though, a lot of people make the mistake to say that, oh, I got the job because I'm Hispanic, right? The internship was given to me because I'm a diversity quota. But that's really not the case. Like, you may, in these conferences, you may be given an interview, but that doesn't mean that they're going to water it down just because, we're minority, etc. Like, no, the internships are like, the interviews are real. And there are multiple times where I didn't get a job just because I wasn't good enough, right? So definitely don't let any comment like that bring you down, and just go to conferences, apply to jobs, and try your best. And that is number one. Just wanted to clarify that though, because I've heard of that a lot, and it's unfair. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Cecia, thanks for bringing that up. I really, to your point, it's when you go to these conferences like SHIP, Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers, or Alpha, that Association of Latino Professionals, or you go to the NAVA, National Association of Black Accountants, they are looking for diversity, and they are treating, if anything, you are getting access because of your background, but that doesn't mean that they're taking it easier. So it's an opportunity that otherwise you wouldn't be able to have, and you want to take advantage of that. So thanks for that. I just wanted to make that comment. Really
sure. Yeah, it's an opportunity, and you just have to study to actually pass the interviews. So definitely take advantage of that. All right, so let's review resumes. So I included here my resume. Obviously, my resume may not be the best, but over the years, I think I've curated it enough to make it good enough for interviewers. One of the things that I did notice was that over the evolving of this resume, some recruiters would remember me because of the color. So a lot of times they tell you, no, black and white, color is too much, etc. I personally disagree. There have been recruiters, they're like, oh, pink resume, right? Like, they will put your face to a resume. So make sure you know how to stand out. I'm not saying you have to add a whole lot of color, like, you really don't. But make sure that everything is clean, formatted, and there are multiple templates out there that you can follow to make it nice. Like, I used to even have icons of companies, and then it was getting too much. So you need to make sure one is too much. So for example, here you can clearly tell which companies I worked at, like what my role was. I do color coding, I do bullet points to make sure that I tell a story in a concise manner. If your GPA is above a 3.5, definitely include it. If not, leave it out. They're not going to ask you for it. There's very few companies that do ask for it. I think Google asked me for my transcript when I was interviewing, for example. If it is above a 3.5, do include it. Why not? But yeah, don't be afraid to leave it out. A lot of these companies really don't care. As long as you can pass those interviews, right? So yeah, make sure to include your LinkedIn, your GitHub if you have one. GitHub is like a repository for storing your projects, which I'll get into later. And yeah, definitely apart from your experience, if you don't have any projects. If you have not done any project outside of class, put your class projects, write about it, write what you did. Because then it at least shows that you're doing something, you know? And that's what I did to land my first internship at Carnival. I had no experience, but I went to a lot of hackathons, and you see how small my projects and hackathons is? It's because now I have too much experience that I don't really need that section. But before, I didn't have any experience. So all that section of experience was filled with projects. So make sure to include that. I also include technical skills. Don't lie there. Really don't. Trust me, like there have been people who have lied saying that they know all of these languages. But when it comes to your interviews, everything on that resume is fair game. So if you say you are really knowledgeable, for example, right now, I'm saying I'm really knowledgeable in NumPy, so I better be able to answer these questions if they ask me about them. Whereas, for example, I'm saying that I'm learning C#, right? So that gives me more of an edge where an interviewer won't be surprised if I don't know everything perfectly. And then of course, extracurricular, if you have leadership positions, definitely include that. That's super important. And it shows that you have a life outside of class and that you have leadership. So any questions about that before I head out? All right, so practice makes perfect. Let's talk about behavioral interviews. Sorry, I always mess them up. So in behavioral interviews, that is usually your first round. So in tech interviews, there's usually 2 to 3 to 4 rounds, depending on a company. And then the last round is usually a whole day of interviewing. So in your first round, it'll probably consist of either a recruiter call, and it'll be really behavioral. So it'll be like, oh, tell me about a time when, you know, it can be multiple things. When you had a problem with a colleague, when you had a really hard project, and how were you able to overcome a time constraint, etc. Stuff like that. Tell me about one of your projects that you worked on in your internship. How did you code it? How did you learn, etc. Why do you want to work here? That's a really important one. A lot of people don't really know how to answer that. So make sure you literally read about the company you are interviewing with. You don't want to look like someone who just wants a job. You want to look like you're passionate about the company. Even if you're not, fake it till you make it. It's really important, actually. Like, and plus, you do want to work at a place that you are passionate about. It's not just like the name or etc. How would you implement this given your previous experience? They want to kind of see how you relate your previous experience with how you would work in their company. So these are common behavioral questions. They look easy, but believe it or not, a lot of people get stuck in these behavioral questions. So make sure you just rehearse them a couple of times and you should be good. Now let's move on to LeadCode. LeadCode is one of the main, websites that programmers use to practice. So here you will get, like, for example, this is a candy challenge, and this one is rated as hard. Usually they have easy, medium, hard. I was honestly really bad at the hard ones. This is just an example. But yeah, definitely practice. I know people who practice, an hour a day. You could even 20 minutes a day will make the difference if you start off with the easy ones and then work your way to the middle ones. I would say that most companies will give you medium ones, not really hard ones, unless you're going for like Airbnb or something, because they're really difficult to get in. But yeah, I think if you study a lot of the medium ones and you truly comprehend what they're asking, you should be okay. So LeadCode.com recommendation. Books. You have Cracking the Coding interview book. That one is kind of like LeadCode, but in book format. So if you prefer to just carry a book with you and like read and, you know, whatever, that's a good one. I would recommend 30 minutes a day with practicing that. And then for PM, there's cracking the PM interview book. And there they ask you questions about product design. So unlike software engineering, you don't really need to go to LeadCode. I mean, we do get asked like maybe one technical question, but it really depends on your interviewer. Most of the time it'll be more like talking about architecture rather than like coding it as a PM. But depending on the company, Google does give you whiteboarding. I had whiteboarding for them. But yeah, cracking the PM interview book covers it all. They cover product design, execution, metrics, and the technical portion as well. Mock interviews, again, basically grab anyone, your group friend, anyone who's practicing, and you know, just practice. It's a conversation. So you're probably like, how do I even do it? So let's try it out. I'm gonna need one volunteer. Does anyone want to volunteer? If not, I'm gonna pick on Kevin. No volunteers.
I'm sure we'll have somebody here who would like to try it out.
I promise it'll be easy, I promise.
Let's see, we got some folks here representing. Let us know before, you know, spare me.
Fair
So
Kevin.
let's see what we have.
Help him.
So we'll give them a 5-second count, see if we have any brave souls.
Anyone in the
we got
chat?
a few.
I can't see the chat because I'm presenting.
Gotcha. I don't see anyone in the chat yet, but I see we got a few folks, right? Jorge, Eduardo, Juan, Ludmina. So I don't see anyone. I'm gonna go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and I am your volunteer, Cesia.
Pobrecito. I'm so sorry. I'm joking. All right.
No worries, no worries. I definitely need some practice. So let's go for it.
Okay, so one of the main questions is design an elevator, right? So this is a product question. So I'll guide you through it. So I'm gonna pretend I'm the interviewer. Hi, Kevin, can you design an elevator? So,
well,
okay.
I can certainly try to, but I might have some more questions about just what are you trying to accomplish with this elevator. So I'm sure that I might want to ask about how many floors is it going to be, what's the timetable for creating it, and then talk about what materials we might have access to, and maybe the overall artistic views of how you want it to look, the aesthetics. So I might have some questions about that before I design it for you.
That is awesome. You see, like to begin with, in a product question, you do not want to go straight into designing it. That's like a big red flag. You want to ask all these questions. So like you just said, you want to ask all about the elevator, the building, etc. One of the main things I would say is you want to know who your customer is going to be. Who is the person who's going to be using that? Is it someone who's blind? Is it someone who only speaks Spanish? Is it someone rich? I mean, do we need to go super high tech in this elevator, right? Like they probably won't want a normal one. They probably would want a super expensive one. So here I listed how I would answer it. This is what I've always done. Obviously, there's so many different frameworks. I don't even think this is a framework. I think this is just how I answer. There's no right or wrong framework. I usually ask myself, who, what, where, and why? Who are we designing this for? What geographical location are they from? What kind of product? What kind of elevator, for example? How many floors? So many questions. And then where is this going to be? What geographical location? Is it a urban area? Is it more of a suburb, etc.? And then why? Is there a reason why we need an elevator here? Is it because there's a lot of patients? It might be for a hospital, right? It may be for a nursing home. So maybe that might change a lot in the elevator. Like you might need really big font if it's for an older generation, and then like maybe even a bit more louder in order for them to hear. So many things like that. So you want to ask these questions to your interviewer, because then it shows them like, oh wow, this person's product thoughts are there. Like it might not be a perfect answer because you're a new grad, or you're a student still, but these are the kind of questions that they ask, that they want you to ask. My bad. Mm-hmm. So thank you, Kevin, for those really good answers. Now for awesome. Technical, this is literally an example. I'm not gonna really go into it because I haven't coded as a software engineer in a bit. Well, unless you count my master's, but that's different. So basically, some of the questions would be like, oh, given an array, remove duplicates, right? That's an easy question. Again, you want to ask questions before jumping in, like, oh, what language should I code this in? Because sometimes they may want you to do it in Java. You want to clarify the question, how big is the array? What type is the array? Like, is it an array of strings? Is it an array of integers, etc.? Is the array sorted? I don't know. You can literally ask all these questions. And then go ahead.
Cesia, and I'm thinking from some of us who are not on the coding world, what is an array would probably be a question that I would have. And I see Juan's raised his hand as well.
Go ahead, Juan.
Hey, Cesia, I was just going to ask, you did graduate with a major in computer science. So my question was really, are you allowed to use those built-in language little shortcuts? Like, for example, if you're in Python and your array is given as a list, you can just say, well, I can convert it to a set. And the built-in function of that is the data structure will go back, will not go back, but it will remove the duplicate entries.
Yeah.
So is that allowed? I know I'm like overlooking a lot of other aspects, like what sort of data are we dealing with? The like eventual end goal of this.
I totally get your question. It really depends on the company. I've had times where I've tried doing those shortcuts, especially if you know the library as well, right? Like I use Python all the time for that same reason, because it makes sense. I would definitely say just ask. If not, then there have been times where I've asked and they say no. So you have to do it like the rough way. But yeah, it really depends on the interviewer. Sometimes they might not like that because they're not really seeing you think through the problem. It's more like I live like really close to the street. They might just be like, oh, you're using a declarative function. Like that's not really telling me much. Like you could memorize that. But some interviewers might be cool and they won't care. So definitely just a question that you would have to ask.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah. And then number one here, when you're answering the question, you have to speak your thoughts. Like I went through a lot of software engineering interviews for internships. And when I first started, one of my main feedbacks were when I wouldn't get a role was that I wasn't talking enough. You might be the best coder in the world. You might know everything about a language or whatever. But if you're not talking, then it's really hard for the interviewer to know what you're really thinking. It's like, did this person just, memorize this? Like maybe they have seen it in LeadCode, and they just memorized it and they're not even telling me what every single line does, right? So for example, like if I'm talking about an array, I'd be like, oh yeah, so we have an array of like 10 digits. So if I do this pointer would move to this, you get what I mean? Like you have to really go through every single line and talk about what you're thinking. That will be very beneficial. And especially because once you're in the workforce, they want to be able to work with another engineer who can communicate what they are thinking. I think communication is key in the industry, both as a software engineer and as a PM. So definitely be able to let your interviewer know your thought process. That is number one. If you do not talk during an interview, the odds of you getting that internship or full-time offer are going to become smaller, because it's really hard for the interviewer to follow what you're doing, even if you get the answer right. So as annoying as it sounds, like, just talk through every single thing that you write. Like, and you don't have to like talk the whole time, but you can be like, oh yeah, for this, like, I just coded this because of this. Something like that, you know, just to give the interviewer context. After you give the answer, try to optimize your time complexity. And this is only if you have like extra time. So say you have like 10 minutes left, and he's like, oh, I don't have any more questions for you, but maybe if you want to go ahead and try a better complexity. So by that, I mean, maybe you gave an answer that's O of n squared, maybe you did like a nested for loop or something. Maybe there's a better way for you to answer the question. So if you do have the extra time, definitely try to make it, you know, more optimized and all that. So that's what I have for this slide. And then I was going to say, get a mentor. You know, mentorship is super important. I wish I would have had more mentors back then, especially as a dreamer. But now that I'm, you know, in the industry and all that, like, I realized how important it is. Like, even in the industry, I still have a lot of mentors. Like, just because you get a job doesn't mean that mentorship is over. Like, there's still so much to learn, like, at any stage in your career. You know, if you don't know people, honestly, I've LinkedIn messaged people, and most of the time they're pretty cool. And worst case is they'll say, hey, I don't have a lot of time, so I'm really sorry, or they'll just leave you on red. Like, either way, it doesn't really matter, you tried. Some of the things I did is I found mentors in my school community, especially when I was like a sophomore. I would go to a lot of clubs and get plugged in and like receive mentorship from the older kids and like see how they were, you know, trying to get internships and get like ideas from them, etc. So yeah, definitely get a mentor and join clubs. I think it'll be helpful. Just make sure that you're not also wasting time too much in a club, like doing club stuff. Like, that's awesome, get plugged in, but at the same time, make sure to reserve more time for yourself and your studying so that you can land those internships as well. And when you're looking for jobs or internships and you don't have experience, that shouldn't be too much of a problem. You can locate hackathons near you. So you can go to mlh.io and find multiple hackathons near you. That way you can grow your projects in your GitHub. So the more projects that you have, the easier it'll get for you to actually ace those interviews that you may have, and it'll just make your resume look better as well. So yeah, create the projects and add them to your resume, and you'll hopefully be able to land your first internship or job. But obviously, this is more recommended for freshmen and sophomores. Once you're a junior and senior, then hopefully by then you've had an internship. And if not, just keep going to hackathons, keep adding to your resume so that you can be able to land that job. And I think that is it for today. So if you have any questions, feel free to either ask them now or email me or LinkedIn message me. Yeah, preferably now, I guess, since we still have some time. And yeah, thank you so much for having me and listening to me talk for like 40 minutes straight. I hope it was informative.
Cecia, well, we do have a hand up, so we will have some questions for you. I see Jorge had his hand up, so we're gonna turn it over to him to ask his question.
Hello, hey Cecia. Just not really a question, but I did want to thank you for coming and giving us all these resources. I am a software engineer at Travelers, and I'm 2 years in, but I am looking for something else. And so I do have the Cracking Interview book right beside me, and I've been doing LeadCode, but I do appreciate all the tips. So do you think, I mean, I'm giving myself like 6 months to kind of go through through the book, going through LeadCode. What, from your experience, do you think 6 months is enough to kind of go through all that stuff and then start interviewing, or when should I start looking for interviews?
Actually, thank you so much for bringing that up. I forgot to say that usually you want to start, especially if you're a student. I think you already graduated though, right? But
I did graduate, yeah.
okay, so just for anyone else who may be a student, you want to start interviewing like in October or like early fall, right? Because usually, maybe even earlier if you can. So you might want to start studying and stuff during spring. So that way when fall comes around, you get that job immediately. Because by November, a lot of the really big companies have already filled up their slots for internships and jobs and whatever. But for full-time people like yourself, that's more of a year-round thing. So you should be fine. I do think 6 months is more than enough, especially if you take it seriously. Like if you do like 1 hour a day, some people even ramp it up to 2 hours, but I personally cannot do that. Yeah, I think 6 months should be more than enough. I remember when I was going for jobs, I would say I would study around 30 to 45 minutes for a couple of months back to back. I think 6 months is great. I mean, you're going to be, you should be really good by the time you start interviewing. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah, great question, Jorge. Great question. So any other questions for Ceci as it relates to cracking into tech, interviews? She talked about behavioral interviews, gave us a little bit about the technical interview and how to address it. She gave us a little bit of LinkedIn as well. So some folks put their LinkedIn link on the chat. So definitely stay connected. You can connect with me as well. Connect with Ceci. Melanie here's on the call as well. She's with TheDream.Us. We also have Darlene, who is a alumni council member. So Darlene's here on the call. So we talked about that. We also gave you some resume tips. I gotta tell you, Ceci, so I'm right now working on my own resume as well. One thing I didn't share with everyone earlier today is I went back and I'm also doing my MBA program. So I went back and started looking at my resume and making some adjustments here and there. And I've really the importance of being concise, the importance of being critical of every single bullet point. It's important, especially the more experience that you start to get. So really think once or twice or 3 times about each particular bullet point that you're working on, because that's going to matter. So I wonder if we have any questions. I see we still have a few folks here on the call, and just for any comments before we head out. Melanie, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I am so intrigued by what you do, Cesia. Can you tell me a little bit about what your day-to-day looks like at Microsoft? Like you wake up, you log in, boom. What does your day look like at Microsoft?
Yeah, so yeah, I can do like a preview of what I did as a software engineer versus what I do now. Since we have folks here that might be more interested in software engineering as well. So yeah, as a software engineer, I would say it was definitely a bit more chill in terms of meetings and stuff. Like, you're assigned your stories or tickets or whatever, and you'll probably have a sprint to do it. So if you know what you're doing, like you can probably finish up work even earlier and like have a lot of time left to do whatever you want. And I know that because I see my husband works for Apple as a software engineer, and like he's really smart though, but he's able to like finish up quick, and like he can go on walks during the day, which is something that I cannot do. As a PM, I would say it's definitely a lot more hectic, not more brain hectic, because it's not like I'm coding and like, fixing bugs and all that, but more hectic in the sense that like, if something goes wrong, like you're the face of the product. So everything falls on you. Like I've had vice presidents inbox me like, why has this not come out? Right. So it's a lot more demanding in that sense, or like more stressful in that sense. So my day-to-day, usually I wake up, grab coffee, and I log in, and there's usually a meeting waiting for me. And there's so many meetings, it's like nonstop. And on top of that, I have to write specs and stuff, like, you know, a spec is basically like a documentation about whatever feature that you're the PM owner for. And there you like write what technologies we're using, why we need this, how it would help our customers, like how it would help the organization get ahead of whatever. So that's kind of what a spec is. It's really long. It's a really long paper. So we do spec work, and then there are other features that are past that stage, that design stage, and they're already in implementation. So I have to go to stand up and make sure that the engineers have everything. If they're, you know, since I'm the PM, I also handle partner relationships. So if we are relying on a partner org, I need to make sure that everything is well communicated to that partner org for them to do whatever work is needed for our team to be unblocked, for example. What else do I do? Yeah, there's just so much to do. You know, sometimes I hold bug bashes when we need to make sure that the implementation is tested correctly, for example. So I usually write a document and say what the user should see. So the engineers and sometimes myself will test the code. That's an example. And then sometimes I also run a weekly meeting where all the PMs or developers come in and like we give out updates, and then I send it out to everyone. But yeah, it really varies depending on what org you're working in or what company you're working in. Org is organization within a company, by the way. So I work for Microsoft Teams within Microsoft, the competitor of Zoom. But yeah, so it's a lot of different tasks. I like to say that PMs have like multiple hats. We do a lot, especially a technical PM. But yeah, if I had to choose between either or, I still think I would choose PM. I definitely enjoy it more because I kind of like to be in charge of whatever we're building. But if you're more into being chill and like just coding, then coding is being a software engineer is awesome. Yeah.
Fantastic, Cecia. Thank you for sharing that. I gotta tell you, it makes me very proud to see one of our own working in what is one of the biggest things that has come out of Microsoft the past couple of years, right? Microsoft Teams. So that is fantastic. So you're definitely making us all proud, and I, for one, am very proud to know you, my friend. So keep it rocking, keep representing.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to hopefully have more dreamers and alumni from TheDream.Us and students join us as well. So however I can help, let me know. And I'm really excited for everyone.
Cecia, question really quickly. So sorry. You convinced me. I will apply to Microsoft Teams. How do I do it? What is the first step?
Yeah, so there's multiple ways. You can go to conferences and meet recruiters. You can apply online into the Microsoft Careers portal. And usually they'll have like new grad or positions or whatever level you're looking for, internship. And yeah, that's usually the main way. If you know a recruiter, even better. Back when I was a student, I would be a total creep and I would add all these recruiters and like message them sometimes. And even in your own school, like a lot of times recruiters will come because there will be a job fair. Definitely show up. Don't be scared to show up. It is their job to talk to you. So take advantage of that and like, don't be scared. I know because I used to be scared too of like approaching a recruiter, but don't be like, that is literally their job. Their job is to talk to students and like people so that they can join the company. Yeah, and then once you apply, start studying the heck out of those books and LeadCode and do mock interviews with people. And yeah, and then honestly, big tip, a lot of people, when they see me, they think I got into Microsoft the first time. And like, I really did not. Like, I had so many other internships before that you build up your way there. So if it happens that you get an interview and you don't make it the first time, it's literally not the end game. Like you can try every 6 months or something like that. And just work your way up until you get to where you want to work at. So definitely don't feel bad. Like I've been rejected multiple times by, Google or like, I don't know, Facebook, I guess, like 3 years ago. And then I got into Microsoft. So yeah, the more you learn, I even got rejected by Microsoft the first time I applied as an intern, back when I was a sophomore. Cause you learn from your mistakes and then you put all that learning into action and then get in. And yeah, it doesn't matter where you start as long as you keep pushing. I literally started at FIU. I was an engineer for FIU. And then I got into Carnival, and then I got into Visa in Palo Alto. And then I got into Microsoft. So I literally worked my way up, and yeah. But hopefully some of you get in there the first time. That would be awesome too.
Yes.
So.
Fantastic, Ceci. Well, I'm hearing a lot of, allowing failure to be a friend of yours. Sometimes when a door closes, it's directing you to a different place. It also means that, hey, at that moment, it wasn't meant to be. And you went in and you practiced it and you went into different other places and then eventually it became a yes.
Yeah,
so
now
don't give up.
Yeah, exactly. Also, really quickly, I did see in the chat that Juan had said that he wanted to learn more about the experience of working at Fang, Microsoft, etc. I have multiple friends in Fang as well. Like, well, to begin with, my husband works for Apple. One of my friends works for Facebook, and then I have other people working at Amazon, and literally, like, in tech, like you befriend all these people, and we hang out all the time. Yeah, I do think it's fun. I wouldn't say it's that different from working at any company, I would say. The only thing that really changes is mainly the money, the salary. But other than that, the work is just work at the end of the day. I do like at Microsoft, for example, that I work at specifically for Microsoft Teams, but then there are other orgs that I probably would not be as interested in. So instead of looking at the company, I would more so look at the organization within the company that you're going to work for. For example, there are smaller companies, but maybe there's like an accessibility org that might be better than, like, say, working for AWS. No offense to AWS, but I just personally would not want to work there. That's just my preference. So yeah, like there's like, yeah, instead of looking at the big, company, like there are certain orgs that, like, I wouldn't want to be in at Microsoft, for example, like that just don't interest me, versus another org that, like, I don't know, any company. So, but yeah, other than that, it's fun. I mean, other companies like Facebook, they get free food, and Google too. And then, yeah, literally those are tiny perks. We get like a lot of fitness perks, and like we get a $1,200 like option to like buy health stuff or like do a gym stuff. So it's like little benefits that differ across Fang, but and then the salaries are different too. Like there are some companies that pay higher than others, etc. But other than that, like it's pretty fun, and you are really surrounded by a lot of really smart people. So I came out of high school thinking I was the smartest thing in the world, thinking I was like, wow, like a genius. I mean, I remember, like, I literally had a huge head, and then and then I went to college and I was like, oh, I'm actually not that smart. Like there's a lot of people that have been coding for years, and I started coding, my freshman year of college. So it was a big humbling experience, I would say. And I mean, I love that. Like, it's good to be humbled. And especially once you start in the industry, like in these companies, there's so many smart people, like ridiculously smart people. You will feel small in the beginning, like I definitely did. But then over time, you realize that, you're meant to be there as well. And it's fun to be surrounded by people who are at that level as well. So yeah, I hope I answered your question.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Really, I guess just the concern somewhat of like the work-life balance and some of the stories, the more public ones that you hear about FANG, people that work at FANG. So it's like, then you said you start thinking about specific organizations within those companies, like, oh man, how cool it would be to work. I wouldn't, like you said, I wouldn't also go for AWS because I can only imagine that must be insane. But yeah, I guess my next question really, or something that's been like bugging me for quite a while, is how yourself or people in your team, or I don't know, Microsoft as a whole specifically, how do you deal with like not getting overwhelmed with the new technology comes out, like feels like almost every single day?
I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you, it is overwhelming. I mean, every year there's something new. Like, well, every month, every week there's something new, right? Like, I mean, I can't really talk about it much because it's like NDA and all that, but yeah, I do get overwhelmed. There's always something new. There's always something, a new feature, and like, it's a lot. What I do is though, I think to myself, hey, I'm really lucky to be here to even be doing all this. So I just take a deep breath. I try to meditate. I try to do yoga. I try to like go to the gym and release some stress and all of that. So yeah, that's what kind of keeps me going. And I'm also a person who really likes the challenges, I would say. And to add to what you said previously about the work-life balance, I do agree some orgs and some companies have terrible work-life balance. So you just have to find your right fit. If you feel like you're being overworked, there's another company out there waiting for you who probably have less work. And at the end of the day, what matters the most is your emotional and mental health. But yeah, one of the main things that I do and that I know my coworkers do is we do a lot of fitness. I also picked up embroidering actually. Let me show off real quick. Yeah, so every time I get like super stressed or whatever, I literally drop what I'm doing. I drop work and I do like an iteration of the butterfly. And it just helps me take my mind off of it. I go for a walk, and then when you come back, you feel more level-headed and you can think a bit more about how to approach a project. And there is no project that like will keep you awake at night. One thing that I, especially in the beginning when you're starting in these companies, you think you're a slave to the company. It's like, oh my God, I have to go above and beyond to be perfect because I don't want to get fired from this amazing company, right? That's how I used to think. And I remember one time I was telling my coworker, she's a senior by now, like a senior PM. I was like, oh, I want to take tomorrow off, but I can't because I have so much work. And she literally laughed and she was like, Ceci, work is always going to be here. Like, whether you come back tomorrow or come back the day after, it will always be here waiting for you. So why don't you just take that day off? Don't think about work. So now I've been doing that. In the beginning, for example, I would take a day off for mental health or whatever. And I would literally have people messaging me on my day off and I would respond because I feel obligated. Like, oh, there's so much building up. There's so many, sorry, that's my husband. There's so many features building up, etc. But now what I do is I literally turn off my phone. I don't care. It's my day off. And what I do too now is I make sure that I start work at 8 and at 5 I'm off. Like if someone has a question, I can respond to them tomorrow, like in business hours. And that's how it should be. So just make sure that when you're feeling overwhelmed, obviously there are days that I may have to work a little bit more, especially if there's a release coming up and like, or there's a presentation to a vice president, whatever. But that's very rare and different, right? And it won't happen often. So where I'm trying to get to is you're responsible for setting your boundaries. if you don't set those boundaries, then people will pile up on you and they will be like, oh, well, Ceci always answers. Ceci can do this. No, Ceci has a work time. And if you do not meet me at my time, you can wait until the next day. So that's how I value my time and make sure to not get overwhelmed by having my personal time as well. And I hope that helps. And that goes for any company, not just Microsoft or Fang, any company and any job.
Wow. I really love what you mentioned about the boundaries. You know, Melanie agrees with that. And I gotta tell you, I love seeing the embroidery that you're working on. That was fantastic. Thanks for sharing that with us. You know, find your own hobby, I suppose. You know, everyone can find your own thing that maybe you like to do. Maybe you just start to doodle on a white piece of paper, or you go on a long walk, or maybe you pick up growing plants. You know, whatever it is that you feel like it's part of your identity, maybe start a little routine there to kind of help with the stress. So, you know, identify what works for you and then make it from there. So Cecia, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. I really enjoyed it. I appreciate everyone who joined today, Eduardo, Jorge, Juan, Darlene, Ludmina, and of course, Melanie for the support. Thank you so much for being here today. We will continue this again next week on Tuesday. We have our next event is Where Are They Now?